What's going on, guys? We're back out in the shop today and we've got some help. Finally some help. So what we're gonna do today, we're gonna work on building some bars for this window, just because it's always made me a little bit nervous on somebody breaking in, and it sucks that you have to do this kind of stuff, but if someone was gonna break in, that's probably where they're gonna break in. So this is going to be a perfect project for Bridger to start getting his feet wet, as well as McCoy. McCoy's going to help him, but I kind of want Bridger to take the lead on this one and build the bars for the window. I'm going to give him some ideas on what I think the design should look like, how I think it should attach to the window and stuff like that. But that's our plan today. We're going to get these youngsters working, because they need it, and see if we can't get some bars built for the window. This is something I've been needing to get done for a while. It'll be a little bit of peace of mind for me to have them up there and done. So we're going to knock that out today. The other thing we're going to do is, for the last episode of the year, we are going to do a Q&A. There's been a lot of questions that have been asked on the channel over the course of this last year, and so we're going to take some time and answer the most popular questions, the most common questions that we see here on the channel. So kick back and enjoy. Let's see if we can't get this done. We're going to go ahead and we're just going to try to answer the most common questions that we have seen here on the channel in the comments section. The boys are going to take turns asking the 10 most common questions that we've seen here on the channel.
Did you go to a welding school?
Okay, so I actually did not go to a welding school. The first thing I actually did when I started wanting to learn how to weld was I did take one college class, and I took it through the high school here where I'm at. We live in a fairly small town, and so they did offer some Utah State University college classes. I did take their beginning welding course. I excelled through the classes, but I still didn't feel like I really knew how to weld. I knew the basics of how to set up a welder and how to burn a rod, but I didn't really know the craft. I didn't really know the trade. I would say, if you are interested in learning the trade, if you have the opportunity of working for somebody, whether it be part-time or full-time, that is in the trade and runs a welding business, it would be very beneficial, because you'll be able to learn real world experience, and in my opinion, you're going to learn it a lot quicker than you will at a trade school or taking college classes or something like that. And so working for the other welding company here in town, that's really what gave me my experience, and that's really what helped me know the trade. How to fabricate, how to weld, how to fit, all those things. So that would be my advice to somebody who's looking to get into the trade.
Where did you learn to weld?
In 2009, I started welding for a guy just locally here in town that owns his own welding and fabrication business. At the time, I was a high school custodian. From time to time, I would have to repair something in the school, and so I would go down and I would use the high school welding shop to try to repair whatever it was I was working on. At that time, I kind of decided that I had an interest in welding, and so I would go down and practice after hours and try to learn more about the trade. I really didn't know what I was doing. I don't know how productive the practice really was, but I knew I had an interest in it. And so I started looking around for what kind of options the trade offered someone like me. I actually ended up talking to a friend who worked for Komatsu, the equipment company, and he told me they were looking for guys who could build the big dump truck beds. And so I went and I met with the guy who was basically in charge of their hiring process, and he wanted me to do a weld test. Well, you got to remember, I didn't have a whole lot of practice, and so he actually gave me a spool of wire to practice with, which I thought was super cool. I took the roll of wire, and my father-in-law took me down to this guy who owns the welding business here in town took me down to his shop and told him that I was trying to get this job working for Komatsu and wanted to know if he would be willing to teach me what I needed to know to try to pass this welding test. And so I started going down there a couple nights a week, practicing, and he would teach me what I needed to know to try to pass the welding test. After going down a couple nights a week and practicing at this guy's shop, he approached me with an opportunity to come and work for him part-time aside from my full-time job. He expressed to me that he didn't want to try to deter me from getting the job with Komatsu, but he did tell me if you do get the job with Komatsu, you're just going to be burning wire all day long. And you'll be laying out underneath the tarp in the heat, in coveralls, just burning wire all day long. You would just strictly be a welder. And there's nothing wrong with that, but that wasn't really what I was after. I wanted to learn the trade. I wanted to learn and progress and grow. And so I decided to take him up on the offer, and from that year, from 2009 until 2020, I ended up working for this guy who offered me the job. And so I worked 2 jobs from 2009 to 2020. That job is basically what gave me my whole background in welding. And this guy that I worked for was very handy. He had been in the trade for a long time. He'd worked a lot of different places, and he basically did what I'm doing now. He worked for several welding companies, and he learned the trade, and it just got to the point where he knew that he could make it on his own, and so he went out on his own, and now he's extremely successful, and he's very knowledgeable, and he's really the one that I owe my background to when it comes to welding, because he's the one that gave me the opportunity to learn the trade. Welding, cutting, and when I say welding, TIG welding, stick welding, MIG welding, brazing, those are all skills that I acquired from working for this other welding company. And it was, I don't regret it. It was probably the best thing I could have done to be able to learn the trade. It was nice that I was able to make money on the side of my full-time job to provide for my family, and ultimately it's what gave me the money to be able to build my shop and buy all my equipment and make it to where I am today. So I'm extremely grateful for that.
Is Freedom Fab a full-time job?
Right now I actually work a full-time job elsewhere. I don't operate Freedom Fabrication full-time. It is a part-time job for me. Some days it feels more like it's a second full-time job. It keeps us extremely busy, but not to the point where it's burdensome or anything like that. I do work for Rio Tinto, which is a company that owns one of the largest copper mines in the world, and I'm a construction coordinator for them. So I oversee and help manage some of the projects going on at Rio Tinto. And it's good. It gives me more construction experience and knowledge, helps me understand more of the management side of things, which is something that I've never really been part of. Everything else that I did before that was all maintenance background. I was a maintenance mechanic for several different companies. So as for right now, Freedom Fab is just a second job, part-time job, whatever you want to call it. It does keep us busy. We are a legitimate business. We have a business license, and we follow all the procedures and protocols for running a business. We just don't do it full time. The main reason for that is I have a family, and for me to afford benefits on my own, I don't really feel like I'm to that point yet. Benefits are extremely expensive when you own your own business, and so at this point in my career with Freedom Fabrication, I'm just going to continue to run it as a side business, and I'll still keep my benefits through my full-time job, and we'll see what the future brings. But as for right now, Freedom Fab is just a side business.
What is your hourly rate?
This is something that we have received quite a few questions about, is what we charge at Freedom Fab. And I'm not willing to convey all of that information just because there are a lot of variables that affect what someone would charge for their hourly rate in a welding business. Some of those being where you live, what your skill level is, or what kind of equipment you have. These are all things that affect how much you would charge in your business. I would say if you really are interested in how much you should be charging for some kind of a side hustle that you have, or some kind of a small business that you're trying to get going where you live, do your research about what other welders are charging in your area. It's been my experience that most of the other welders in the area, they're completely fine sharing what they charge per hour with you, because if you are a legitimate business, a competitive market is healthy for everyone. They actually want you to be competitive with whatever they're charging. I've even had a couple of guys nearby here that have told me you need to be charging more. For your equipment, your skills and ability, the type of facility you have, you need to be charging more. And part of the reason they say that is because it helps them out too, because it's a competitive market. I would say just do your research in your area and you'll be able to come up with where your rate should be. A typical rate for a welding business, if you've got decent equipment and good skill and knowledge and those sort of things, typically anywhere from $50 an hour clear up to $150 an hour. But I would say just do your research and you'll be able to pinpoint about where you should be.
Where did you get the jib cranes?
The jib cranes, if you haven't seen some of the other videos we've done, we actually built the jib cranes and we installed them ourselves. We machined the pins for them. And I am planning on doing a video on just the jib cranes. The jib on the jib crane is 20 feet long. We did have to add a column that ties in with the existing column on the building, and it is about 14 feet tall. The pins I designed myself and I machined them as such so that I could grease the top and the bottom. And there's a grease channel that goes down through the center, sends grease out where both of the hinge points are. It did take 150-foot length of beam to fabricate one jib crane. So between the two jib cranes in the shop, there's 100 feet of beam there. I've actually talked about what the prices were when I built the jib cranes. If you are interested in the jib cranes, refer to the 2022 shop tour video where I do go into quite a bit of detail about the jib cranes, what it took to build them, and how I tied them in with my building. So that's pretty much the jib cranes.
Why do you mainly use dual shield?
Okay, so the reason I mainly use dual shield is just because here in our shop we do a lot of structural things, and dual shield, to put it plain and simple, is just better for structural things because it has better penetration, in my opinion. There are a lot of guys that would argue that. Now, if I'm doing structural work out in the field, I am either going to run my Trailblazer and burn rod, or I'm going to set up a suitcase welder and I'll burn dual shield, weather permitting. But typically in the shop, if it's structural, I'm going to use dual shield. It runs smoother. It has better penetration. I've ran miles and miles of dual shield and I just feel like I'm most comfortable with it. People typically try to stick with what they're good at, and I feel like I have pretty much mastered dual shield, and so it does a good job, and so I just stick with that. So that's why I use dual shield so much. That's not to say that I don't think that other types of welding and other welding processes have their time to shine. There are certain things that I weld with short arc and only short arc, and there are a lot of things that I only weld with TIG as well. So I believe in using the right tool for the job. And if short arc is best for whatever you're welding, use short arc. If dual shield is best for what you're welding, use dual shield. And so it's not that I think that dual shield is better than the others. I just think that most of the work that I do here in the shop, dual shield is more better suited for that type of welding than some of the lighter stuff. And so that's typically what you guys see.
Why do you mainly use the plasma cutter for gouging?
Okay, so I don't have carbon arc set up yet. I'm still working on getting one. I've told you guys in previous videos that I am working on building a welding trailer, and that's still coming up. As of right now, I don't have an air arc set up. I am eventually going to get there, and I would like to be able to take some of my parts when I'm doing reamers and stuff. I would like to take them out of the shop, and I would like to be able to scarf the teeth off of those with carbon arc and not have to worry about blowing sparks all over the shop. But as for right now, it just makes more sense for me to use the plasma cutter because I have the consumables for it. It runs good, it works good for the applications that I've used it for so far. It's fast. So for right now, I'm just going to use the plasma cutter for any sort of gouging that I need to do until I get my carbon arc set up, and then it will just depend on what type of work I'm doing on the job. So that's why you guys mainly see me using the plasma cutter for any gouging work that we do here in the shop.
Why don't you use silver pencils versus soapstone?
Okay, so the reason that I use soapstone versus silver pencils most of the time, and I do own silver pencils and I use them from time to time, but I actually do just prefer soapstone. And I think a lot of that is just because that's how I was taught. The guy that taught me how to do layout and fabricate always used soapstone, and he's the one that taught me to sharpen my soapstone so that I get a nice precise crow's foot mark when I'm marking things off. And I just feel like it just works better for me, and I'm just more used to it. The silver pencils are nice. It's not that I don't like them. I do feel like they're a little more high maintenance because I tend to burn through the lead a lot quicker. I feel like the lead in them is a lot softer. When I'm working on something like a reamer and I've got to lay some teeth out, the lead in the silver pencils will actually melt, and so I can't use those because they just make a mess basically. But the soapstone doesn't. I can take a piece of steel that's 500 degrees and I can make a mark on it with my soapstone and it shows up just fine and it doesn't melt because it's stone. It just seems to work better for my applications here in the shop. That's just why I prefer soapstone.
Why don't you show more arc shots?
It's just really hard for me to get good footage of an arc shot. And I guess I need to learn a little bit more about what kind of setup these guys are running on their cameras that give them really good arc shots. I know there's filters you can buy and stuff like that. I've actually tried to take an old welding hood lens and mock it up on the camera and try to get some decent footage, but it just hasn't worked good, and I really don't want to put crappy footage on my videos. If it's not going to help you guys out, I would just rather not do it. And so I am going to try to get some arc shot stuff mastered, but that's definitely going to take some time for us, I think. And I'm going to have to do some research and figure out how these guys are getting the arc shots that they are. One of the best I've seen is Welding Tips and Tricks. I think the guy's name is Jody Collier. His channel's fantastic. He's got fantastic footage, fantastic arc shots. Maybe I'll try emailing him or messaging him and seeing what kind of setup he's running that allows him to get such great arc shots. So we're gonna work on it, but as for right now, it's just basically camera equipment. We're limited with that, so that's why we don't.
What is your favorite shop tool?
Oh, my favorite shop tool. That's a toughie. This is actually a question that Bridger came up with. And I think it's a good question because when you have a shop full of tools and you're doing all different kinds of work, I can honestly say I've thought about this question for realistically probably hours, and I don't know that I can limit it to one tool. I love tools. I just love tools. I love having the right tool for the job, and I love having good tools. I really enjoy running my Miller XMT 350 machine, and to be honest, I think it's made me the most money in the shop. It's a good machine. I like that it's a multi-process machine, so I run TIG, and MIG and stick with it. I've ran all three with it quite a bit. So it's an industrial machine, so it'll do pretty much anything you need to do. So that's probably one of my favorites. I really enjoy running the lathe and the mill. So I've got a lot of tools that I really enjoy running, but that's probably the main ones here in the shop. Alright, so that's our Q&A for 2022. If you guys like this kind of stuff, drop a comment, let us know. We really do want to answer your guys' questions and try to help you guys out as much as we can. So if we didn't happen to put a question in here that you guys still want to hear, drop it in the comment section below. We'll try to get to it, or we'll save it for the next Q&A. It's really cool being able to have a shop like we do and being able to teach your kids some of the stuff that you've been able to learn over the years, and for them to be able to have the opportunity to learn a trade that is getting honestly more and more rare. And I think that goes for all trades. Trades are at a point now in the world where they're getting more rare and they're getting more valuable because there's just less people out there that are wanting to do them. I assume that's why. But if you've got some kids out there that are interested in learning and working hard and aren't afraid to get dirty, I feel like you can really teach them some things that are going to help them out in life and just help them be more valuable to society. It's just cool to be able to teach your kids some of the things that you've learned in life and that you hope will end up benefiting them in their life. We look forward to another year of giving you guys hopefully some entertainment, some instructional videos. Hopefully you guys are getting some good things out of it. Thanks for watching the Q&A. We'll see you on the next one. Hey, don't pull that by the cord. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do here is we're going to suck up all the bugs in the window, and then we'll talk design. Okay, so here's how I like to do things when I am fabbing something up. I like to draw a picture. Get the notepad. Okay, so draw the window or draw the frame that we're going to build. So then you want to check on the bottom and on the top. So you're about 34 5/16 wide. when you're doing something like this, you want to check and make sure it's square. So check the top too. 36 3/8. Pretty close. 36 3/8. We can either do an angle frame or a flat bar frame, and when we drill through that, we'll be drilling through steel, and then there's framework around it on the inside. So it's going to go through steel and wood. So we'll be able to anchor it to the point where if somebody really is trying to get through that window, they're not going to do it without somebody knowing they're trying to do it. Maybe let's go over and see what kind of angle we have, what kind of flat bar we have, and then we'll make a decision on which one we want to go with. Okay, so let's go see what we got. So you're not going to get two out of that one. Nope. You're going to weld these open corner. So your weld is going to be here. You're going to fill this in with weld. You get what I'm saying? So what we've got is we don't have enough angle to build the original design, so we've decided we're just going to do it out of flat bar. The benefit of that is we'll be able to scoot the frame in and out wherever we want it, whereas if we were going to use angle, I was going to have it sit on the outside, so it would just sit on the outside. I do think it gives it more of a finished look, but this is going to work. And if someone really is going to try to break in, I think this is actually a better design, because then they're not going to be able to just beat on the frame and pound it out of the wall. So with the way we're building this, once we get it done, I'll show you guys what I got planned. We're going to have Bridger start figuring out the lengths on this and get them sheared, and we'll go from there.
Inch on this, a quarter inch on this, and a quarter inch on this.
No. Half inch on this, half inch on this, half inch on this, half inch on this.
Okay.
Okay? Do you understand why?
No. Just because.
Well, so why don't you figure it out so you can learn?
Because if it's a quarter here and a quarter here, isn't it just half?
But you got to pull back a quarter here and a quarter here.
Okay.
Do you get that? So if you pull back a quarter here and a quarter here and a quarter here and a quarter here and here, here, and here, and here, that's where you're getting the quarter here and the quarter here. So that's a quarter plus a quarter is a half. Got it?
Yeah, I got it.
Okay. So this one, what's 34 and a quarter minus a half?
34 and a quarter. That's just 33 and 3/4.
Man. I know grown men that can't do that. 33 and 3/4. Now let me give you a pointer. Tip your soapstone this way instead of this way, and make your mark. See how accurate I can get. So 33 and 3/4, you can get right on the money. See that? Okay. Now, so we don't get deflection from the iron worker, let's go over and cut them on the saw. Go closer. Drop the blade till it's closer so you can get really accurate. Stop. Okay, you don't want it to be touching. Okay, that's good. Cut down.
How fast do you want me to go?
Leaning into that saw. If it gets old, your sweater. Okay, so you just did the math, right, on the second one?
Yeah.
And you deducted,
This one.
what did you deduct?
A half.
A half. Okay, so 36 and 3/8 minus a half is
35 and 7/8.
35 and 7/8. Okay.
Right here.
You mark it, and I'll check it. So, you got a top, a bottom, and a side, right? Okay, so what's the next thing you want to do now? Yeah? Holes, right? We're going to put some holes in it. So we want to lay out where we want our holes. So, I'm not sure why that was so funny. Let's go 4 inches off the ends. Okay. Okay, and then we'll just do the same thing, pull 4 inches off the end here. Okay, we're going to leave this like this because looking at the iron worker, we're going to be able to tack this up and still be able to punch it. Oh no, we won't. Yeah, we will. And we'll still be able to punch it with it assembled. So maybe we'll go ahead and get this tacked up now. Stuff like this is always easier when you have somebody helping you fit. So I'm going to help Bridger fit these up. So we'll start by taking a top piece, a side piece. We're going to weld these up with an open corner, just like that. And so we're going to have him put a tack right inside that open corner. Okay, so that's looking pretty good there now. So now let's take the other side. Okay, that's good. Just a nice, that was good. Just a nice tack, okay? Good. Good. We're getting it. Okay, one more. We'll square it off the table to make sure. Let me get a hammer. Good. Okay, now put a tack there. Just right at the top. And we'll do the same thing all the way around. Good. So if we have a bar here, and then we go 8 here, let's mark it and see what we'll come up with. So honestly, I think that's good. So what we're gonna do is we'll just take this distance, which is what?
16
and 3/4. So we'll go 8 3/8, and that's gonna be the center of our bar, right? Okay, so mark, burn a foot right there, and we'll go 8 3/8. Okay, and we're gonna do the same thing over here. You good?
Yep.
8 3/8. That should give us 8 3/8 here. Okay. So we're good. So now we're just going to do the same thing. We got to figure out what it's going to be here, because obviously this distance is longer, right? So it'll be an 8 by 9 square. I'm not worried about it. I think that's going to be fine. So you got bar, bar, bar. Now we can measure what we want to cut the bars. Okay. So we know where our bars go. We know where our bolts are going to go. We should be good. Now let's get our measurement on our bars. These guys can cut the bars.
I need 3 of 35 and 13/16 and 3 of 33 and 11/16.
Let's see what size bar we're going to use first.
And 13/16.
You sure?
Yep.
Go get the paper just to be sure. Ooh, I hope we got enough. Okay. So on this, all you got to do, push your tape measure up against the blade, and then pull this out to 35 13/16. Go ahead and tighten that.
It's time for today's super cool tool.
Alright, so for today's super cool tool, we've already talked about our bandsaw quite a bit, and I think we've actually had this on the super cool tool segment before. But what I want to talk about today is a component on the saw that really is a super cool tool, and that is your part stop, or at least that's what I call it. So this is your part stop right here. It's this component, and if you look at it, it's got a rod that slides in and out. There's a knob right here that I can tighten. I know I've had some comments in the past on the channel about setting up some sort of a similar sort of setup here, but this saw actually comes standard with this setup on it. So it's kind of cool because like when the boys are cutting, they can pull the measurement on the first one and then set this up and then just slam it up against the part stop and then keep going. So this tool right here is something that saves a lot of time, and that way they don't have to sit and measure every single part. So it's a pretty stinking handy tool, and it definitely comes in handy, especially when you're doing you know, mass production type parts where we've got to cut a lot of these pieces of rod. This is something that's going to save us a lot of time. So if you've never seen these, I would definitely check on the bandsaw that you might be using, because chances are it's probably got one on it. Most of the saws that I've ran have some sort of setup like this on it. So I would check it out, see if it has one. If not, there is a similar sort of setup that you can do where you've just got to fabricate like a piece of angle or something, clamp it to your saw, and you can have a similar setup for not too much effort. But anyway, I just wanted to go over that because this is something that'll save you a lot of time as a fabricator when you're running the saw and you got a whole bunch of parts to cut out. So that's today's super cool tool. Let's get back to the video. Okay, so I've got the bars all laid out and tacked up. Bridger's still over at the saw cutting out parts for this. I'm going to go ahead and start welding this out while he's still cutting those up, because we've got somewhere to be shortly and we're going to try and get this done today. So I'm going to go ahead and weld these out, and we'll get it to the point where it's time to weld it to the frame, and we'll go from there. Alright, so we just want to give you guys a quick update. So we got this all fit up, but if you look here, our vertical bars, these vertical bars are all tight. See that? That's tight. It's tight at both ends on the vertical rods, but on the horizontal, we actually didn't have enough rod to finish it. So instead of having to wait until Tuesday or whatever after New Year's, what we've decided to do is we've cut these little pieces of 3/4 pipe and we're putting a piece on every joint right here. So we're gonna put a piece of pipe on every joint and then we'll weld those out. That way, when we get these on here, it's gonna hide that they were too short, and we'll just weld it, you'll never know. And I do kind of think it looks cool, so. Just one of those things we had to do to make it work so that we could get it done today. We were short on material, but it's gonna look cool, it's gonna work. And you know, we're not putting this in there because we think it's gonna be absolutely unstoppable, but what it is gonna do is it's gonna buy me some time to throw some shoes on, grab my gun, and come out here if somebody is trying to get in. So that's the point of this. So we're gonna see if we can't get these pieces tacked up and welded out, and once that's done, we're ready to throw it in and get it mounted. So we'll go to that point. Okay, so we almost forgot to punch these with the iron worker. It wouldn't have completely ruined the project if we didn't, but it's going to be a lot easier to just go over to the iron worker, hurry and punch them, throw it in, drill the holes, and run the bolts in. So we're going to go ahead and center punch these, get them over to the iron worker, and punch them. One more. All right, let's do this.
Is that gonna work or no?
Well, if we go 6 inches. Got our holes punched. Okay, this is how it goes. All these on now. Drop that on your finger, that's good.
I almost did.
Then you'll really be having fun. Ready?
Yeah.
Lift the ears up and put it in the hole.
Why are the hole?
Okay. There. so we got our bars all welded up. We had Bridger do the corners. I did all the round stuff. That's not the best stuff to learn on, so I went ahead and knocked that stuff out. Bridger did the corners. He did a good job. So now we're ready to mark where our holes are going to go. We'll pull this back out, drill the holes, and go from there. Okay guys, so here's where we're at. We went to the hardware store because we didn't have the right hardware to mount this. All we've got left to do is to anchor it down. We've got the holes drilled and everything, so that's pretty much going to wrap up this episode. So pretty happy with how it turned out. It does look pretty cool with the pipe pieces on there. Even though we were a little short material, I think it worked out. Everything turned out straight and level, and it fits in this window nice and tight, so I like that. But I think it's going to keep any hooligans out that try to come through the window, so, or at least they'll give me a chance to grab my gun. So 2022's been really good to us. We've gained a lot of new customers as a business. We've grown a lot as a business. We have grown as a channel on YouTube, gained a lot of new subscribers, and we appreciate you guys for that, and appreciate you guys for watching. We look forward to new business adventures and new subscribers and new friends through the YouTube thing in 2023. So here's to you guys. Have a happy new year. We'll see you on the next one. Son of a gun.
Do you want me to stop recording?
Yeah.
Let's watch each other think.
Whoa, 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 whoa. So when I said tack it, I meant tack it. Okay, so I've got the main bars. I've got the bars, which wouldn't have been, again, it wouldn't have been, what am I trying to say? I don't remember.
Wouldn't have been something that could.
And then we're gonna drive our. And then we're gonna drive our. And then we're gonna drive our brain fart right in there. And then we're gonna drive our lag screws. And then we're gonna drive our lag screws in. What are you laughing at? Okay, stop laughing. They're going to be a lot less likely to have a Torx head on them than they're going to be good hell. They're going to be a lot less likely to have a Torx bit on them than they are just a regular socket or a wrench or something. So I actually like this better. So that's pretty much, would you stop? We appreciate you guys watching. We hope you guys have a happy new year. This year has been pretty good to us. We have really grown as a business. We've picked up a lot of new customers. We've also gained a lot of new okay, let's start this over. This year's been really good to us. We've gained a lot of new subscribers. The channel's grown a lot. As a business, we've grown. We've gained a lot of new I cannot Okay, here we go again. There are a lot of variables that have.
Why don't you use silver pencils versus soapstone? Why don't you use silver pencils versus soapstone?
Say it again.
Soapstone. Why don't you use silver pencils versus...
You forgot how to talk. Okay.
Why don't you use silver pencils versus soapstone?
Soapstone. Say it again.
Why don't you use silver pencils versus soapstone? Oh my God!
Yeah, it's hard, isn't it? Okay, go ahead.
Why don't you use silver pencils versus soapstone?
Quit laughing. Say it again. This is actually a question that McCoy came up with. Oh. Bridger's shaking his head. No, that was me, Dad.